He was a man who declared himself the unique miracle, but his reign was anything but. As the first president of Equatorial Guinea, Francisco Macías Nguema became so paranoid he ordered the murders of his own family members. When he was finally overthrown and sentenced to death, the soldiers were so terrified of his alleged magical powers that they refused to carry out the execution. This is the story of a dictator so feared that even in death, he held power over his own soldiers. In 1968, the world celebrated as Equatorial Guinea gained its independence from Spain with its first democratically elected president, Francisco Macías Nguema. He promised a new future for his country, but within years, his regime would be compared to Nazi concentration camps, earning the nation the chilling nickname the Dachau of Africa. He became so paranoid he banned the word intellectual, and so bizarre he was believed to have moved the entire national treasury to his house. To understand Macías Nguema, you have to look at his past. He was born into the Fang ethnic group, which is the largest and most dominant ethnic group in Equatorial Guinea, making up over 85% of the population. He had a difficult childhood that left him with a lifelong fear of death. As a young man, he failed the civil service exam 3 times, only passing on his 4th attempt with the help of Spanish colonial favoritism. Despite his lack of education, he was seen by the Spanish as a weak-willed and easily manipulated figure, and they rapidly promoted him through the ranks. In 1968, when Spain was pressured to grant independence, they expected him to be a puppet leader who would ensure continued Spanish economic interests. In what was the country's only free election to date, he defeated his opponent and was sworn in as president. The world had no idea what was to come. The moment he took office, Macías began a rapid and terrifying consolidation of power. He had his political opponents either killed or imprisoned, and within a few years, he declared himself president for life and made the country a one-party state. He began to systematically dismantle every institution that could challenge him, including the judiciary, the military, and the Catholic Church. Even Spain, his country's former colonial ruler, recognized the growing instability. They began to recall their citizens from Equatorial Guinea, unsure of what Macías might do next. His madness culminated in a grotesque event on Christmas Eve in 1969. At a stadium in the capital city of Malabo, Macías rounded up dozens of undesirables and ordered their execution. As the hit song "Those Were the Days" by Mary Hopkin blasted over the stadium's loudspeakers, his executioners, dressed as Santa Claus, began shooting and hanging them. The remaining victims were ordered to dig holes, assuming they were going to bury those who were slain. But no, the holes they dug were for themselves. When they finished, they were buried up to their necks and left for the red ants. This horrific act marked a new, bizarre low in his reign of terror. In a 1973 plebiscite, he granted himself absolute authority, turning Equatorial Guinea into a one-party state with himself as president for life. He filled the most powerful positions in his government, military, and brutal youth militia with his own relatives, including his nephew, Teodoro Obiang. He then set about establishing a chilling cult of personality. He gave himself absurd titles like the Unique Miracle and Grand Master of Education, Science, and Culture. The cult was so extreme that he even placed photos of himself in churches, with a famous banner in one that read, "God created Equatorial Guinea thanks to Macías." As his paranoia deepened, his reign grew more bizarre and violent. He began to systematically murder anyone he perceived as a threat, including government ministers and even his own family. Intellectuals were a particular target. He outlawed the word intellectual and ordered anyone wearing glasses to be killed, viewing education as a threat to his absolute rule. He also ordered all boats destroyed, a desperate measure to keep his people from fleeing his horrifying regime. Under his rule, his prisons, like the notorious Black Beach, became torture and execution grounds, and dissidents were often beaten to death. His brutality and paranoia grew at an alarming rate. He targeted educated people in the minority booby population, leading to a genocide that wiped out a significant portion of the country. He earned a reputation as being one of the most unpredictable and erratic leaders in the world. Rumors swirled that his behavior was fueled by drugs like bhang and iboga, and that he believed he possessed magical powers. He even collected the skulls of his victims, a habit that contributed to the fear and terror he inspired. As his paranoia worsened, Macías Nguema stopped living in the presidential palace and instead became a recluse in a fortified villa in his home village. He even had a private prison there where he would occasionally personally execute inmates. He continued to pass bizarre decrees. He Africanized his name, demanded the population do the same, and banned Western clothes, foods, and medicine, declaring them un-African. His descent into madness was so complete that he outlawed Christianity and claimed there is no other God than Macías. Under his rule, the country's economy and society collapsed. The once thriving nation experienced a massive brain drain as a third of the population either fled or was killed. The economy was shattered, and he was known to have moved the entire national treasury to his villa. His bizarre and paranoid actions knew no bounds as he outlawed Western medicine, branded private education as subversive, and even banned ocean fishing to prevent people from escaping the country by boat. To prevent people from escaping, he had mines buried in the only road out of the country and ordered camouflaged ditches with spikes to be constructed along the mainland border. His rule became so brutal that statisticians who published data on the country's population were dismembered for supposedly learning to count. By 1978, a U.S. House of Representatives joint resolution was proposed to condemn him for religious persecution and genocide. He had become so withdrawn, he was reportedly seen wandering his villa, speaking to the spirits of his victims. By 1979, the country was in a state of complete ruin. In a final desperate act of paranoia, Macías Nguema sent his wife and 3 youngest children to North Korea, where they would be protected and receive their education. Macías Nguema's actions had grown so erratic that they led his nephew Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo to stage a bloody coup. Macías was eventually captured and put on trial for his crimes, including genocide, mass murder, and treason. He was found guilty and sentenced to death. The soldiers ordered to carry out the execution were so terrified of Macías's alleged magical powers that they refused to form a firing squad. Instead, a new Moroccan presidential guard had to be brought in to carry out the sentence. Macías Nguema was executed on September 29, 1979, and his body was buried in a secret location. The legacy of Francisco Macías Nguema is one of absolute terror and devastation. he remains a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power and the human cost of a dictator's madness. What aspects of Francisco Macías Nguema's rule do you find most unsettling? Share your thoughts in the comments.